and he asked me if I was planning on like exiting Painter Growth one day. And I said, and I thought a lot about this, right? Like if a PE firm came and like offered us a ton of money. And
welcome to the Painter Growth Podcast, where we help you scale your painting company in record time. Join us as we explore sales, marketing, hiring, finances, leadership, and more, everything that you need to know to scale and grow your painting business. I hope you enjoy and subscribe.
What's up, everybody? Mike Hickman here, founder of paintergrowth.com, and you're listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. And my guest today, a man of very high esteem in my books.
Oh,
you know that. Mr. Brandon Vaughn, founder of Hirebus. We got Wise Coatings. Which is like $1.5 million a month in flooring epoxy. What is your painting company?
That is my painting company.
Well, that was
Floor Coatings.
Okay, but you had that with your dad. I mean,
painting company had all clean.
Yeah.
Home services. Yeah, pressure washing, window cleaning. Serial entrepreneur. I got about 9 companies right now, but I have people that run most of those businesses.
You started them, you scaled them, you sold them.
Yeah. I love business. I like the game of it. For me, it feels like a creative art expression more so than anything else. I feel like I'm kind of fulfilling the purpose of creating.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big part of that for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a privileged spot to be. Right?
For sure.
Because a lot of people get into business because they don't have another choice and they just need to feed their family. And so they operate in this like scarcity world and never are able to get out of that and experience what entrepreneurs, because that's not entrepreneurship, right? That's feeding your family. Entrepreneurship is like being in that position where you can be creative and you can create initiatives and you can you can ask big questions and solve big problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. One of the things I love, I actually have a shirt that has entrepreneur, someone who's willing to jump off a cliff and build a plane on the way down. And like that, someone who's willing to pursue greater than average risk for greater than average reward. That's always been really exciting to me. And I think that concept of pursuing risk and being scared and terrified, like I've just learned to kind of embrace that and kind of let that be fuel every day. I kind of have to. I kind of have to convince myself that everything's okay. You know that little gif of the dog where everything's on fire around him? He's like, this is fine. Yeah. That's me every day, it feels like.
Yeah. And that's kind of like leading us to where the topic of today is going to go, which is even if things look like they can be going really well for business owners and entrepreneurs who are growing big businesses, or even for small businesses who look like they have it figured out, it's like we don't always have it figured out. Things are often on fire behind us, and we choose to do hard things because they are hard.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely agree. For sure. I'd love to talk about that. I think this is something that I've been really passionate about, especially the last 2 years, kind of discovering about myself, about what really motivates me and what drives me and what my why is and what I feel like my purpose is. I feel like I've been very fortunate to be able to discover that and lean into it a little bit more. And there's a lot of resources and a lot of things that I've kind of studied to try to dive into that and explore that concept a little bit more. So I'd love to talk about that.
Let's do it. Now, before we talk about that, can you tell us the first half of the airplane story?
The first half of the airplane story?
Yeah. And then you can finish the airplane story at the end of the episode.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this was actually a story that was shared with me. So I'm a hobby pilot, so hobbyist pilot. Not trying to do it for literally the whole reason why I decided to do it was because it was hard and it sounded really fun and epic. And it just sounded like a cool thing to kind of learn how to do. And my certified flight instructor told me this story about a gentleman, name was Michael, who decided to take a flight to his best friend's wedding. And he was going to, he got his plane. He was going to go fly out to this wedding. And what he decided to do was take off, even though there's a big storm that was brewing. And his wife was really nervous, told him, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't go out and fly. Like, you just go fly commercial. And he was keeping a close eye on it, but he felt this thing called get there-itis. This is what pilots call this, where you have this pressure to fly kind of no matter what, because someone's depending on you. And the people that were depending on him was the bride and groom who he promised he would take on a honeymoon flight right after the wedding. So he's like, I got to get there. I have to get there. So he made the judgment call to go off and take off. And within minutes of him taking off, this storm literally enveloped his plane. And he is a VFR only pilot, which means he can only fly under visual flight rules. So legally, he cannot fly through clouds. You have to like legally stay miles away from clouds. So he gets completely enveloped, and literally when you are enveloped with this, they call it in the soup, it's completely whited out. Everywhere you look, you cannot see anything. And your brain starts playing tricks on you. Your inner ear actually starts messing with you and convinces you that what your instruments are saying is wrong. So even though you feel like you're on a straight course, or maybe you're turning or banking, you're positive because that's what your brain is telling you is happening. But you look at your instruments and it says something completely different. And this is how a lot of people die. Kobe Bryant, this is how he passed away. His pilots in the helicopter got into the soup, started distrusting their instruments, and actually, ended up nosediving down into a side of a cliff. So like, this is a real thing that happens with pilots. So he 180s and tries to kind of like get back out of this. And the reason why I kind of love this story and why I told it at your event when I was speaking there is because it's kind of a journey of a business owner in a lot of ways, where we're kind of unqualified. We decide that we are going to do it anyways. We're going to take off in our plane, and we don't really have all the qualifications that we need to be able to weather a storm. But we have this really big vision of this end goal, end state, and then, things happen. And I'll tell the end of the story at the end of the
I mean, so when you think about this, and I don't think enough people really consider this role. You look at people like, for example, Mark Zuckerberg comes to mind. Mark Zuckerberg is running Facebook, running Meta, multi-billion-dollar business. When he started Facebook, he was a developer in his dorm room at whatever, Stanford. And he started this thing, was just like, had no revenue, and all of a sudden went public. And now he's worth, $50 billion overnight. And now he's a CEO of this like multi-billion-dollar corporation. He did not ever have experience running even $100 million corporation, or a $10 million corporation, or a $1 million corporation before now running a $1 billion corporation. But you rise to the occasion.
It's true. And it takes a weirdo to do that. It really does. I mean, it takes someone very odd in your thinking to decide, okay, one day I'm a painter, next day I'm the CEO. And this is fine. This is normal. Like it does take a little bit of a level of hubris. And I think that for me, I would say it's not as much about ego. It's more about my undying optimism that oftentimes gets me in trouble. And my wife and I, we literally just had this conversation this week because I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm starting stuff up all the time. I have all these side projects going on all the time. I have like 60 domain names that I own of some future business that I promise I'm going to do someday.
Me too.
And I told her this epiphany I had not that long ago, where I just said, I honestly believe that if it wasn't for my optimism, I would not start any of these businesses. If I really was very careful and methodical and logical and really thought about the risk that's associated with doing this crazy entrepreneurial venture, I probably wouldn't do it. But my optimism, my low criticality inspires me to do it. And then my ability to just not quit no matter what, even when it really sucks, is the way that I'm able to make that successful. And I think that most reasonable people, like even Elon Musk talked about this in an interview. He said that he knew that SpaceX had like a less than like 1% chance of surviving, or something stupid like less than a 10% chance of successful. He's like, I thought for sure it was going to fail, but it's that still being able to kind of take that risk kind of despite those odds. And then just having the fortitude and the resiliency and the mental toughness to just refuse to quit no matter what. Because the second you quit, it's like selling your stock when it's tanked. Like that's when you actually realize the loss, rather than riding it out and holding your own stock, knowing that it's going to get back to a place later on. And I think that's tough to do when you're in the thick of it and things really suck.
It is absolutely tough to do. The other Elon example that kind of comes to mind is his chronic optimism around like timelines and capabilities. And for example, like this full self-driving thing, right? He's like, I think his tagline now is, we're building the future just late.
Yeah.
Like,
I didn't hear that. That's cool.
yeah, or something like that, right? But
Yeah.
it's like it's kind of like poking at his like he's like we're gonna have self-driving this year. We're gonna do, but he sets these timelines and he passes that initiative down to his team, and they work as hard as they can to try to hit those timelines. But if he was like, hey, well, we're gonna get there in 5 years, like they would never get there because they don't have that constant urgency. Like for me, at least, I have a constant urgency within me and my business to hit certain targets and milestones and be bigger and at this size and be accomplishing this thing and done this thing. But if I didn't have that urgency, like we wouldn't be anywhere.
Yeah. And I think that a gap where a lot of small business owners, they don't realize is that, okay, it's one thing to just call a pie in the sky idea and put it out there. And I've talked to a lot of business owners that will say this. In fact, it reminds me of a mastermind event that I went to where there's a business owner sitting at the table and there's 8 other business owners around, and we're each talking about our goals. And he said, I want to be a $10 million company in the next 3 years. Okay, it's awesome. How big are you now? $250,000. And everyone at the table laughed, every single person. And I said, hold on a second, don't laugh. We don't want to put our self-limiting beliefs on him. Like, let's figure this out. And then you go through the act of actually reverse engineering that and building that. Okay, 10 million is the goal in 5 years. Then what do we have to do in 4 years and 3 years and 2 years, all the way down to 1? How many trucks do we need to buy each month? How many employees do we need? How much do we need to spend on marketing each month? And when you actually do all the work and effort of trying to reverse engineer that, for me, I've realized that that's actually my only chance that I have of actually being able to make any of those big dreams and goals and aspirations come through. And I think Elon does a good job of that too, where although maybe he does it with a little more of a forceful hand, but that dude grinds and his output of what he's able to do and create is kind of unbelievable. But it's that, reverse engineered approach of, okay, we have the goal in mind. Now let's reverse engineer it backwards and try to get like the very next step that we should be taking.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a spot that a lot of business owners, specifically contractors, never do is set goals.
Yeah,
they don't set goals, and even if they do set goals, they don't set like aggressive or realistic goals, because I think there's just a misunderstanding of what can be done in a year or 3 years.
That's true.
Like, I had a guy just a couple of weeks ago. He said, within 3 years, I want to be off the tools. Right. And it's like, you can't like, you don't want to like make fun of it or tell him he's wrong, but I think it's a re-education on like what is possible with the right system. Cause maybe that's all that he feels is possible. Cause he's only seen his, he saw his dad never able to get off the tools. So maybe in 3 years he can do it himself.
Right. Right. Yeah. That act of just writing it down, I think, is a good first step. There's this cool study that was done by the American Society of Training and Development. And what they did is they studied executives, entrepreneurs over the course of decades, a huge cohort of them. And they found that the most successful people, there was 2 things they found out. You're 40 to 60% more likely to achieve your goals simply by just writing them down. There's actually neurological processes that happen in your brain by manifesting it from a thought into an actual physical component. It now actually exists in the real world, as opposed to just something that's just in your mind or what you say. Like, you actually write it down. You're 60 to 95% more likely to achieve those goals when you do 3 things. You write it down, you set a date to it, and then you have somebody else hold you accountable to that. Someone that you actually trust, know, and like. And that's, I think, one of the biggest reasons why Painter Growth is so massively successful. Is, I was so honored when you invited me to come out and take a look at your community and what you guys do. You did this very thing. You sat down, you wrote all the goals down, you like set the dates to them. You have accountability groups where people hold each other accountable. Like, that actually is the thing that makes people up to 95% more likely to achieve their goals, is when you have those other few elements that are laid out. It doesn't just happen magically, and it takes a ton of work. But the hard part about being the boss is you're the boss. So, if you don't tell anyone your goals and your dreams and you don't make that declaration, okay, who's going to hold you accountable to it? Only you're going to know that you let yourself down. No one else is going to. And that's a big part of motivation, I believe, at least for me.
I'm a big believer in profit first goal setting. And a lot of people don't do this. They set a goal. Like, I want to run $1 million business. Right? Some people have. I want to run a 7-figure business. It's like, okay, why?
Right.
Well, because I want, because I just want to.
It's a really cool number. It's a nice,
Yeah,
extra digit.
it is a cool number. But like ego is so huge for so many people. I mean, myself included. Like I got ego, and have things that I like to do just because I think they're cool to do, and it feeds my ego, and I recognize that. But if you start your goal setting with how much money do I really need? How much do I want to do that? Like, what are the things that I want to do? How much money is that going to take? Okay, I want to make 10K per month in profit. Cool. You don't need $1 million business to do that.
It's true.
Right? You could do that with a $50,000 a month business with way less stress and way fewer moving parts than $1 million business, which again has so much more complexity. I'm not saying that that's wrong to want $1 million business, but what do you want for your life, and can you get there more easily?
Yeah. What do they say? Revenues for vanity, profits for sanity.
Yeah, something like that. Make smoke, not fire. Make fire, not smoke.
Make fire, not smoke.
Yeah. Fire's profit, smoke is
revenue. Your smoke signaling.
Yeah. Why do you think? And I don't think actually all entrepreneurs are drawn to doing hard things. And I want to just differentiate business owner versus entrepreneur, because a lot of business owners, a lot of painting contractors specifically, have been thrust into business. They're not entrepreneurs, meaning that they didn't want to start a business. They're running their business now because of their circumstances. For whatever reason, they're now running a business. Maybe they got fired from their job, they couldn't find another job, or they took over from their dad or their parents, or their side projects just kind of took off, so they just went that route. That's very different than entrepreneurship. Right? Well, not very different, but I think there is a distinction. Whereas entrepreneurship is like, I'm going to go solve a new problem with a new solution. Or am I just? What do you think on that? I'm just creating these thoughts as they come out.
That's a cool perspective. I haven't really given that much thought, but I understand what you mean by that. How entrepreneur. I think that's maybe why a lot of small business owners that we talk to don't really feel like they resonate with the term entrepreneur, even though I may feel like they're an entrepreneur because they've done something crazy and kind of wild. I typically find that most people I talk to, they didn't necessarily, just happen to kind of fall into it. They did it with some type of why motive. It was tied to some kind of a dream. Maybe I don't believe it was something where they said, people have a problem and I'm going to design a solution to their problem. And I think that is definitely more of that entrepreneurial type of mindset, to go find problems and find solutions and then create those. So I see what you mean by the distinction between those two. I do think most people who do own a business right now, they have a dream that they had for themselves where they thought that their business could be a tool to deliver that dream for them. And that's kind of why they did it. It wasn't necessarily like, I really want to solve and help the homeowner that has the problem with finding good painters. I want to solve that in an altruistic way. It's like, no, I want my dreams to be fulfilled, and I want to hopefully have more time freedom, spend more time with my family, make more money, set a legacy, create it. It's all very self motives.
Yeah.
I'd say. So I understand. I think that's the point that you're kind of driving a little bit between those two. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's probably the one part that I missed on that. Cause it's not one's not better than the other by any means. They're just different.
Yeah.
And I think that you're right with creating, a lot of contracting business owners recognize that starting a painting business or starting any trades business is a faster line to financial and time freedom than being an employee.
Right.
And so they find that through the vocation of painting, which is totally cool. But then that I think there's a lot of skills that are required to build a successful business that are there's a little bit of uninformed optimism there.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. It's kind of like an iceberg. The painting is the part that you see that's visible above the water, like how to paint and what brushes and what paint we should use and technique, and should we tape or not tape, and then beneath the iceberg or beneath the surface of the water is the actual 80% of the iceberg that is the whole reason why the thing's floating in the first place, which is sales, marketing, systems, HR, people management, leadership, structure, pricing, math, budgeting, accounting, bookkeeping, like the endless number of hats that I think most of us, when we started our business, were surprised by at some point how much more there is to learn to be successful as a business owner. And I think at some point you kind of also adopt this realization that, okay, Brandon's goals of wanting to deliver freedom is actually dependent upon me actually solving people's problems and looking at the problem as a more of an entrepreneurial slant of how can we be different? How do we serve people at a higher level? How can we be better? How can we, it becomes more about the customer more so than just about there. And I feel like that's almost kind of where you make some of that shift a little bit in mindset to, okay, I'm now designing a thing that hopefully will benefit me, but the thing actually has to benefit everybody else first, and then it'll benefit me at some point. And maybe that is kind of that mental shift where people discover all those other aspects of the business that they have to learn.
I mean, there's a lot of opportunities within trades businesses to be entrepreneurial, right? Like you can create a new customer experience during the estimate process. You can treat your employees really well and have an awesome, create an awesome culture. You can create, amazing, scaled up marketing campaigns and look at the data and generate, leads and have a cool lead to estimate process. And I think implementing those types of systems becomes entrepreneurial. Starting a business is one thing, but turning it into an entrepreneurial organization is it's a hard skill and it's hard to do. And the top 1% of contractors ever get to that point.
I love that. I agree. Yeah, that's a really cool perspective. I don't think I've ever given that very much intentional thought. You're kind of unlocking some cool gold nuggets and aha moments for me in this conversation.
I don't know if I've ever had these thoughts before either.
Yeah, I think it is. It's pretty fascinating. It's interesting when we were first kind of, when you first brought it up, you had mentioned kind of the hard part of the journey. One thing that was very amazing to me when I first met you and kind of hearing your journey, you do these crazy marathon type things and you're very physically fit, you're very active. How much, I'm curious, does that kind of tie into what you believe is to be successful in business as an entrepreneur? How much do you feel like those things are tied to that?
So, yeah, I mean, we started when we were figuring out what our topic for today was going to be around how entrepreneurs like to do hard things. Is not as a rule, but as it seems to be a pretty big trend. You like to do hard things. I like to do hard things. Jason Paris likes to do hard things.
Yeah.
And the main hard, thing in my personal life lately is fitness. So I've done multiple half Ironmans and triathlons and marathons and stuff. But I do that for very selfish reasons. And I think being an entrepreneur has there is definitely a level to being selfish, a selfish component to it. But I do it because it makes me feel really good. It makes my head clear. It makes the training allows me to work towards something that isn't business. I can have a goal and I can work towards it. I can see week over week progress that's separate from my businesses. And then also there's the physical appearance side of it, which gives me confidence. When I feel like I look good, I have more confidence and I show up just that more present and a better, more of a better presence when I'm with people, when I'm feeling fit. And I think that's important as an entrepreneur, that you can demonstrate that you can take care of yourself as well as others.
That's why you're so confident whenever I talk to you. You're just so good looking. That's just
dude. I had enough candy after Halloween. I'm on the actually dry November for me, and I could have used a glass of wine last night.
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, so that's my reason, but you as well. You really like hard things. You don't have to work anymore, right? You could set up your finances. You could stop building. You could just hang out with your wife and your kids all day and just go golfing 5 times a week. Why do you choose to start more companies and build and do this, pull yourself through the mud when you don't have to?
That's a really good question. Someone else asked me this question not that long ago. I think it was Jason Paris. We had this exact same conversation at your event.
Because he's finding himself right now.
it was this very existential, philosophical kind of meandering question that both of us were pondering and thinking through. And my wife was actually sitting next to me during the conversation, so she was able to kind of provide some insights. And I had to make sure that I was saying things that were in alignment with what her perspective was on it as well, because there is definitely a selfish component of it for sure. I don't want to just say that it's purely altruistic of, it's absolutely just for my family. It is 100% for my family. There's some ground rules that I put in place for my work adventures. And what that is I work from home every single day. This office is in my shop that's right next to our house. I go down, I eat lunch with my family. My kids homeschool. I have homeschool programs that I do with them where we teach entrepreneurship, finances, or whatever that is. So we're involved. We're very extremely close as a family. I never want to sacrifice my family on the altar of business. That's a non-negotiable for me. Am I perfect at it? No. Do I have times where I end up getting into a season where I have to grind in the evenings and I get, over my skis and end up getting into trouble where I'm like, bit off more than I can chew. Now I got to grind on this to get out of the situation. Absolutely. I still do that. I'm not perfect at it by any means, but there is a core philosophy that I believe is I don't know what the impact to my kids would be if all they did was just saw their dad, who provides them this wonderful life, doing nothing but just being able to be with them every single day. Because I believe what a parent's job is to do is to provide an environment that most closely is going to emulate the environment that they're going to be experiencing once they become a family member. And my kids, they've seen me when, my kids were very, very young. When my daughter was born, I just lost my business. I lost my house. I had to put her birth on a Nordstrom credit card. Like, we went through our season of big time suck fest early on in entrepreneurial season. So they have seen part of that, but they were very young. And I do believe that if I just stopped working, quote unquote, retired right now, I don't know if that's necessarily best for them to see, hey, this is what it means to work hard. This is what it means to provide the things that we have in our life, is because my dad works hard and he still is driving towards things. I do want them to see that I make my living by providing value to others and by serving others, and try to make that connection that money is actually related to value creation. And the more value you create for people, the more money you're able to generate, and to focus on the value creation first, and the money will follow. So those are the lessons that I kind of think about when it comes to why I want to keep working. And then the other part of it is I'm a creator. I get my most fulfillment when I'm helping somebody else, when I can create something from zero and I can shape it and mold it and create it and have this epic thing that helps provide a vehicle for other people to fit their hopes and goals and dreams into my team. It's very fulfilling and rewarding. And it does satisfy this innate, what I believe, design feature of myself to create and provide that. So long-winded answer, I know, but that's kind of my thought process on why I don't retire and just golf every single day while I still have teenagers in my house.
Yeah. How old are your kids?
17 and 14.
Okay. Yeah. Very impressionable.
And most of the time, I do travel for work. I love to go speak, and I will take turns between either taking one of my kids or taking the entire family. So the next trip that I have coming up here in Austin, I'm bringing my wife and my son. The previous trip I went to Orlando, I brought my son with me, and he, spent time, and we go do escape rooms and we spend a bunch of time together. But I want him to talk to other business owners. I want him to see what dad does. And, so I involve them a lot in the things that I do. And even with their own entrepreneurial ventures, I want to show them lessons and principles of what I'm actively doing, so they can kind of see those parallels.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's right, but that's my philosophy right now.
The one thing I really like there is demonstrating to your kids, even if you really want to be you just want to hang out with your kids all day, even if that is what you wanted to do, that example that's showing them, right? It's you don't have to, you don't have to work hard. I have two girls. You've a boy and a girl?
Yes.
okay, so I have two girls, and one thing that I'm conscious of is like I want to demonstrate, because I think it's like, how does it go? Like they will look to their father as like an example for their partner, right? And they'll never like hypothetically never pick someone like who's less than. And so I want to be that example that like, okay, my dad works hard, he provides, he's supportive, he's like, helpful and kind and compassionate and like, mission driven and all that stuff. I don't think that's what the terms that they would use, but like helping people. And use that as the measuring stick for their future partners.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Those are the things I think about too, and I don't know, what would it be like if, they would find a partner that's just would play golf 5 days a week and play video games with them all day long. And they never really get a chance to see the side of the strong work ethic, just see the side of the relaxing and enjoying. And I'm a big Jordan Peterson fan. I know that's probably a risky thing to say on a podcast.
He's on peak last winter. He was awesome.
But I love his approach and what he talks about with regards to, contentment and happiness and fulfillment is in pushing a rock uphill. And when you see people go into retirement mode who forget what it's like to carry a load, carry a responsibility, they start dying literally, and they become utterly depressed. And the opposite of comfort, or the opposite of discomfort, is not just comfort. Like you have to be able to make sure that you have that responsibility and that load. And I get a lot of fulfillment in service to others. And I've been fortunate to be able to be in a position where I was able to coach for several years, and was one of the most rewarding, fulfilling things I've ever done. And which is why I love working with you. You have that exact same servant heart mentality. It's just, I could never see myself just not doing anything, like I want to be able to teach my kids how to work hard. And I think it's hard to teach them that when you don't.
I had actually an exchange with Tanner Mullen today, just on Slack. And he asked me if I was planning on like exiting Painter Growth one day. And I said, and I thought a lot about this, right? Like if a PE firm came and like offered us a ton of money, and I said I would be open to it, but I think that like between now and whatever that date is, whatever happens, whether I want to like I want to build Painter Growth to something that could be sellable, and sell it, or build it to be just like a cash cow that I hang on to forever, regardless of which direction I want to take, the path to getting there is the exact same.
1,000%.
Right? You want to build a company that like changes people's lives, that throws off a whole bunch of profit, has a really, really great culture. And if you can do those things, it's going to be really attractive to buy, but it's also going to be really attractive to keep. And I think that's how you make the best company. Is it needs to be both. You can't sell a shit sandwich to private equity. Like they're gonna see through that pretty quick.
And you can't be the key man either. Like I think that's the tough part too. Like even with my previous venture, it was me. I was the guy, and I had to work very, very strategically on being able to extract myself out of that and put other key players in place, and and like make it more about the other staff members and team members, and even take a lot more of a back seat. And that was why my company was really valuable to a potential partner that came in to buy it, was because it was in that position. It's kind of like fixing up your house to sell it. When you decide, okay, I want to put this on the market, I want to list it, and you fix the shutters, and you finally nail that piece of trim that's been off of that one wall forever, and you finally caulk the top of some of your trim pieces and fix the hinges on the doors, and like get it all dialed in. And this would happen to me with All Clean. I looked at it and I was like, man, this thing's beautiful. I'm working 5 hours a week in this business. It's generating a 25% net profit. It's like everything's working. It's amazing. And then that's when people came to want to buy it. And it was a kind of a tough decision to sell it at that moment, because I'm like, this is actually pretty great. This is pretty cool. The only reason why I did it was because I could get, between 6 and 8 years worth of that profit now, like instantly. And then that could collapse time for me to go in and start a new venture. And then I could scale that up even faster and create, like that's when it was a first mental unlock for me when I sold my first company. Like, whoa, you can really collapse time. And time to me is actually the most valuable currency we have. yes, you could keep something and you could get that money over the course of the next 5-10 years, but you could also get it all right now. And then now you have money and time to be able to deploy. And then what could you use that money for in the next 5 to 10 years to build your next thing or your next venture? And so, but you have to, you're exactly right. When you said it, I was like, yes, you have to, they get built in the same way, whether you keep it or sell it.
Yeah. The other part of the conversation actually I had with Tanner was, it's how did it go? Certain doors unlock, like my thought process was like certain doors unlock when you have an excess amount of capital to be able to invest. You can, so if like, for example, just throwing numbers out of there, say build this thing up, we sell it for like $30 million, right? Dream come true. Except you don't look at it as winning the lottery. You look at it as now you have a responsibility to deploy this capital to make to do as much good in the world as possible.
Yeah.
That's how I would look at it. Like, yes, okay, we buy a house, okay, we buy a new car, okay, whatever, like retire my wife, like, but now with like the leftover 80% of it, it's like, okay, how can I do the most good? Right. And I think with that like reframe of it, I mean, that's why most probably lottery winners end up going broke in the first year because they don't have that. It's like that selfish mentality. How fast can I spend it? But like, how much good can I do? And then that's going to allow you to have another unlock and put another zero behind it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that what a nature of someone is when they get that level of cash, especially in an exit perspective, is that they hoard it. They actually don't like deploying it and don't like using it because, it is going to be the thing that's going to set them up forever. And they get very, very safe with it. But the most entrepreneurial thing that you actually can do is to leverage that cash and kind of look for your next opportunity and how to do it. And then, of course, you give 35% of it to Uncle Sam. So that sucks too, to have that big chunk go away. Man, that hurts when you're writing those 7-figure checks to the government for something that they didn't even do. It's like, man, it's worse than a broker fee.
There is way worse than a broker fee. But there is, in Canada at least, there's something called a lifetime capital gains exemption.
Of course there is.
What that means is that every Canadian, at least how it is right now, on a business that you own more than 25% of or something, if you sell that, you get up to $1 million tax-free.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you can have up to just over $1 million of tax-free capital gains from business that you sell that you own a lot of in Canada.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it's kind of a cool little. It's something not a lot of business owners, not a lot of Canadians get to use because it's pretty niche.
Yeah, that's nice though. That's nice to be able to get that first $1 million cash free or tax free. That's pretty cool.
Tax free. Yeah. So I guess going back to this impact, what was the thing that drove you, or what was the first kind of major investment or action that you made once you exited your first company to keep that train rolling?
Made my wife really, really nervous. I'll say that. I got the cash from my first sale, the first real business that I sold, where it wasn't like selling a window cleaning route or doing something, this little side gig to just kind of sell off to someone. First real thing I did was All Clean, and sold that company. I had a great exit on it. It was like life-changing money for me. They did not even comprehend. In fact, when the time I sold, I wasn't even looking to sell. I told my wife, hey, let me build this up. 5 years, I'll be able to sell it. I want to be able to make sure I make enough to at least give my dad like a 6-figure gift, because I promised that I'd take care of him and my mom for life, and like that was like a thing. And so I wasn't actively in sell mode though. I was actually speaking at an event and someone approached me and said, hey, can we take you out to lunch? And then they just said, we want to buy your company. And they gave me a really awesome offer. And I looked at my wife because she was sitting right next to me, and she's like doing this with her eyes, like, take it. So I sold, and I'm really glad I did, because I learned a ton. I learned about due diligence. I learned a whole new set of skills around what to look for. What do buyers look for? I saw it from the seller perspective, which was unbelievably helpful later on for a buying perspective.
Yeah.
And the very first thing I did once I paid off all the taxes and everything else was I went to a good friend of mine, Josh Latimer, who owned this little business called Automate, Grow, Sell, and had like, I think a total of about 140 customers on his, like, buying customers on his list. And he was doing this little tiny small coaching group thing. And I bought it, and it was digital courses and a couple other things that were all him. And it was that's what launched Conquer. That was like the next thing that we did that kind of launched that. And I spent, to my wife, an unbelievable amount of money, more money than we spent on like my house to buy this business. And it was scary. It was terrifying, and then later on we were able to take that amount and, that little kind of inkling of a business enabled me to get my next, big exit when I sold that company 4 years later after I bought that, about 3.5, 4 years. So that's kind of a big unlock for me. And then during the course of that time period, I started up several more companies and businesses and invested in other things. And I'm like, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. I'm just going to start companies and just buy them and sell them. And, now I have 12 companies in my portfolio that have CEOs that run those different businesses.
You got a family office.
I'm working on it. Yeah. I definitely have built out the team on the estate and wealth management side and taxes and attorney and kind of built my unit up there. But the next level is to kind of get like a C-level layer that can take care of the holdings co.
Yeah, that's a whole nother skill set that you need to learn.
Dude, I mean, this is my point though, is that when I sold my business, I knew none of this stuff. I'm so underqualified for everything that I do. I love to learn. I love learning. I like figuring things out. I like taking stuff apart and trying to figure out how to do it. I like teaching myself things. I'm very passionate about just trying to figure things out, and it's very fulfilling for me. But other than that, I mean, I didn't go to college. I homeschooled through high school. I went to summer school. I was the kid who had the terrible, ADHD report card. If you can't tell by me bouncing around on subjects when I'm talking, like, it's just that part has always kind of been a part of who I am. But in some ways, it's kind of been a superpower because it's enabled me to just become utterly obsessed with a topic until I get bored of it and then jump on to the next topic. And that just caused me to learn a lot of new things, but still have no clue what I'm doing.
Cool. Like a interesting comparison. Hormozy talks about business compares it to video game levels. So if you're playing like Mario, like Super Mario World, like the side scrolling one for the first time, you're like on the first level, you're going to get like killed by every bad guy. And then you like figure it out, and then you can like cruise through the first level. And then the second level, it's like, okay, a little bit harder. It takes a little bit longer to figure out, but you get killed a bunch of times, keep starting over. And then eventually you get through it to the third level. And then the 10th time you go through, you like cruise through level 1, you cruise through level 2, you cruise to level 3, and then now you're on level 4, and it's like now you're struggling. And so business is kind of like that. In like your first couple businesses, you get through level 1, you get through level 2, you get through level 3, and now it would be easy to get to another business to like the level that All Clean was at.
It's so true.
Is that what's called? All Clean?
Yeah.
So now to get it to that level, you'd be like, oh, I get there in 6 months, right?
Absolutely.
And then even for, their Wise Coatings, it's like, okay, like it took us 3 years, but I could probably do this again in 1 year.
Yeah.
It's like you learn it and you know what you need. But now to get from that level to that next level is like putting a CEO in place of your portfolio. It's like, okay, this is a new boss that I haven't conquered yet. Mm-hmm. It's going to be hard, and I'm going to have to try really hard, and I'm going to have to learn a bunch of new things, and it's going to be uncomfortable. But once I get to that point, placing another CEO later is going to be like way easier. So you just like cross that path.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. With your businesses that you have right now, like on a day-to-day basis, how often would you say you are figuring out problems, like hard problems to try to figure out and solve in your business on just like a day-to-day basis?
I would probably say I've done a good job at like surrounding myself with a good team who handle most of the day-to-day. So that's probably half my job.
Half.
Yeah. I would probably say half my job, at least 2 days a week.
I would agree with that. I think a lot of people have this misconception that everyone else just is better than them, knows more than they do, just having an easier go of it. I think social media can be pretty toxic by just kind of showing the highlight reel.
Mm-hmm.
My buddy Josh says everyone sees the wine and no one sees the crushing of the grapes. And it's really easy to just kind of show that. But bro, we get our grapes crushed like every single day. And there's always something to fix in a business, no matter what. There's this really cool podcast that I heard of, or talk that Simon Sinek gave, where he talks about the infinite game. People think that, like, people understand a concept of a game like football or basketball or soccer, and they say, okay, there's boundaries, there's rules, there's a start, there's a finish. Business is nothing like that. You're not competing in a finite game. It's an infinite game. Players change, rules change, goalposts change, and it's constantly switching. And so every business owner that's out there is always adapting to new circumstances, new marketing methodologies, new hooks. There's ad fatigue, there's creative fatigue, there's even business fatigue. There's new demographics that come in that have different buying personas and buying paths. Like, it's all hard. And I think most entrepreneurs I talk to still feel like they don't know what the heck they're doing in some aspect of what they're doing, because I think growth is inextricably linked to being uncomfortable and not knowing what's next, and kind of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and not really knowing what you're doing. We kind of have to live in a state of constant fear to some extent. You just get more comfortable with it, I think.
Mm-hmm. I don't call it, personally, I don't call it fear, but I call it discomfort.
Yeah.
Or anxiousness. Right. And it's like, okay, like, when's the house going to burn down type thing. But the longer that you do it, the more comfortable you get at those things. And you just, like, at least for me, I just unintentionally create stressors in my life that make me want to, like, motivate me to continue working really hard and being uncomfortable in my business.
Yeah.
If I wanted to, I could just take where Painter Growth is at right now, and I could just, like, literally sit back, work like 10 hours a week. It'd be great. Customers would be happy, but, like, we wouldn't be innovating. We wouldn't be, like, growing. It wouldn't be, like, pushing the envelope, because the market's going to keep evolving around us. Right. So we just need to move faster than the market if we want to keep, dominating. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope that the people are listening really just let what you just said sink in, because I think that I would love to normalize more that even people who you look at that you see as being wildly successful, like Mike and other amazing entrepreneurs, we still are in that state of discomfort. I mean, I want to quit on probably a regular basis. I have those thoughts, at least, where I'm like, this sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Now I'm good at disquieting those thoughts, but I can't prevent them from happening. And I'm better at ironing out the highs and the lows of my emotional roller coaster of feeling like when something's epic, I'm not like, yeah, this is amazing, because I know that it could change the next day, and vice versa. If it's really, really awful, and they're like, okay, I just got to grind through a few days and the light will come. I just focus on 1% improvement. That's like all I can do. So I've gotten better at that. I think emotional regulation is really hard for entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a long time to kind of get more comfortable with just the emotional regulation of just understanding. I think that just comes from reps of just realizing, like, oh, okay, we did survive that.
Yes. And well, for me, at the start of this year, I suffered greatly. Ask my wife. I was a very sufferer of being emotionally tied to the month-to-month outcome of the business. So if I had a month that looked bad on the P&L and was tough, I had a bunch of tough meetings, I had, like, some refund calls and things like that, just like a tough month, I would display those symptoms at home, and I'd be short with kids, and I just have a short temper, and I want to sleep in. I wouldn't be working out. And I started with a mindset coach, intuitive mindset coach, in about February or March of this year. We meet twice a month. And I realized that, like, after August was a pretty tough month for us for a variety of reasons. But anyway, I realized that after that month of August, that, like, for that entire month, I was showing up to all my meetings, stoked, happy, present. I was, like, present with my kids. I wasn't on my phone after work. Like, I was a happy person. I was distancing separating my self-worth from the month-to-month value results of the business. And that was like a huge unlock for me that had actually happened. And I wouldn't have happened without this coach. But that was a little shortcut. I didn't have to do the reps.
What would you credit? What were like some of the cool tools or cool exercises they have you go through? Like, give people an idea.
So it's one of the things that she brings me through are kind of like literally like 45-minute guided meditations where she'll like help me unlock like traumas in my life, in my childhood and my past that are creating these feelings of inadequacy. And she'll like walk me through these things, and like I'll be in like a semi-trance state and just like ask me questions, and I'll be responding with my eyes closed, and just like help me get all these unlocks. And we'll talk about like, past things like childhood, but we'll also talk about things that are going on right now and why that's impacting me. Like there's this competitor that I would just like see his post, and I would just get irrationally frustrated every time I saw him come up. Have you ever experienced that before?
No. What are you talking about?
Okay. So this one competitor, every time I saw his stuff, I would just get this, like, I'd be pissed off. And like much smaller business, like I have no reason to feel like intimidated or anything. And the market's huge. So even if they were bigger than me, like it wouldn't matter because the market's huge. There's enough for everyone. But I just had this irrational, like just hatred. And we worked through it together and started doing like affirmations and journaling, and like all of this helped tremendously. So I think just like easy things like do some affirmations, write down like 3 things that you're good at in a notebook, write down 3 things you're grateful for, and then sit with yourself for 10 minutes or even 5 minutes in complete silence every single day. And if you do those 3 things, like your life will change in a month. but no one listening will do those things. I guarantee it, because they're just so unnatural. I have my notebook here where I do that every single day. I just like, I'm actually filling out things on my notebook every single day.
I think it's hard to do that with the reason why they won't do it is because it's hard to do that without a guide and without someone to hold.
I probably wouldn't do it without a guide too.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah. I mean, I love that you said that, because that's one of the things that actually really attracted me to what you guys do in your program. Was there was a lot of that mindset and the emotional side. People don't understand how much of coaching is marriage counseling and mindset counseling and unlocking stuff with trauma, because all that stuff affects us, whether we are aware of it or not. And I think being able to be guided through that and being humble enough to be able to recognize that, okay, I'll give this a shot, being open-minded enough. There's probably a lot of people that heard what you just said and say, I'd never do that. Shame on you. Like, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you give something like that a shot? Sometimes having that level of open-mindedness actually can be your next unlock, and could be the thing that is holding you back from your next level on Super Mario World in your business.
Yeah. I mean, I was growing up and in my 20s, I was always like, I'll be the last person to ever be meditating. I was like, what is meditating? This is ridiculous. And like, affirmations, like what? I'm just gonna like tell myself how good I am. Like literally for my whole.
You just think of Stuart Smalley on Saturday Night Live. That's what everyone thinks when they hear affirmations.
Exactly, right? Like it's telling yourself how good you are in the mirror. Like it's
right.
But if you just, it's actually. It started this year, and the unlock has been crazy, right? It's all about just like putting your ego to the side, trying something new. If like 1 million people are saying that something's really, really good for you, maybe just try it. Like you never know.
I say same thing for me. I'm glad you brought it up, and I appreciate you sharing, because I know it does take a lot to just be open on that side. But affirmations have been big for me, to be able to say them, those little mantras, those little things that you can just say that kind of change up your state and get you in the right frame of mind before you tackle something. Unbelievable how much it makes a difference on your performance when you are in the right flow state mentally. Mm-hmm. And all those little things I think are so important.
Yeah.
That's
and
cool.
then, you brought that up. That's really easy kind of actionable outcome. The other kind of simple actionable outcome that people could start is by not starting their day reactively, right? I think a lot of people, I mean, I do this, I try not to do this. I don't do this more days than I do this, but like, don't check your email right when you wake up, right? Like give yourself a minute, go work out, go have a cup of coffee, go do some things that don't involve reactivity and work.
Mm.
Like for the first, if you can't do an hour, do 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Wait 15 minutes. Go down, grab a coffee, go to the bathroom, brush your teeth. Like do all of that at least before you check your phone. And if you can go a little bit longer, if you can do a workout and then have breakfast without checking your phone, even better.
That's solid advice. You know what the E stands for in email?
I'm sorry?
Do you know what the E stands for in email?
What's that?
Everyone else's agenda. Someone told me that. I had a mentor tell me that before. The E stands for everyone else's agenda. It's always an ask. It's always someone that someone else needs you to do. And it's very, very rarely something that actually is furthering your own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
It's always furthering someone else's. I was like, dang, that's so true. Anytime I open up an email, I have 10 more things on my task list. I got to reply back to this. It's just that mounting feeling of, oh, great. I got to do all this stuff first before I start focusing on my stuff. That's good advice. I like that. I'll have to work on that myself too. That'll be my commitment to people listening, is to try to be a little more intentional about not checking those immediately when I wake up.
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing that I've noticed recently that I need to be better at is, say I'll have like a 2-hour work block where I don't have any meetings, but I have like a project I want to work on. I'll spend like the first 30 minutes of that answering emails or messages.
Yeah. It's finally a break time.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I don't have meetings. All right, let's catch up on email. Let's not tackle this, like, really important project that I've been meaning to get to. But, you're operating in that urgent and not important area, whereas you want to get to the not urgent, but very important, which is the business building, which is where I try to spend half of my week.
Do you color code your calendar at all?
I want to, but Apple Calendar doesn't facilitate color coding. Google Calendar does, and I really like the Apple Calendar. So I just categorize business and personal because they're on different calendars.
Gotcha.
But
yeah, I've been doing that a lot lately, where I have my system will go in and take all of the appointments that I have. I separate them out from weekly team meetings. I have a color for that. I have sales related ones, personal development related ones, project blocks. It's like working on the business time. Yeah. And I try to have that there, and it's cool because it'll have insights on, how much time I've spent in each one of those different categories. Say like, how many
that's cool.
Yeah, that's all. It's all Google Calendar. They have that over on the side.
Yeah, you're not an iPhone guy.
I just, it's mostly because if you're going to be an iPhone, you have to be in everything Apple. Yeah. And I actually loved my iPhone when I had it, but I use Windows and Samsung and Google for pretty much everything. Yeah. So it just made more sense for me to go on the Google ecosystem.
Makes sense.
And I just have to be shamed by having green bubbles by people.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm an Apple everything, so I use the Apple Calendar.
It makes sense for that. Yeah.
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 But no, I heavily use block scheduling. I would love to have that type of insight. But anyway, it is what it is. As long as you're doing something and you're aware of it, like you don't have to get to that color coding level.
That's right.
Being aware of how you spend your time is, over half the battle.
Yeah, agreed. Dude, this was awesome. I love the direction that our conversation took. I really enjoyed it and want to do more of this. We need to geek out more often on this type of topic. I think a lot of people need to hear more things like this.
What a great way to end our Friday. I know this is going to be released probably next week or the week after, but great way to end our Friday afternoon. And dude, always a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me on, Mike. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks for listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. If you want to grow your painting business, go to www.paintergrowth.com or click on the top link in the description. Talk soon.